It was a humid Friday night in Austin, Texas. The kind of night where the air itself felt thick enough to drink. Neon lights blinked lazily outside Mac's Roadhouse, a small bar tucked between a rundown gas station and a tattoo shop. The sign buzzed and flickered, spelling out cold beer, live country. Inside, it smelled of cigarettes, whiskey, and regret. Mac's wasn't the kind of place for newcomers. Everyone who came there either worked in uniform or drank like they used to. Off-duty cops filled most of the seats, their badges hidden, but their egos shining through. Country music spilled from the jukebox, and a pool ball clacked against another, breaking the background noise. That night, Jordan and Jason Carter, twin brothers both in their mid-30s, pushed open the door and stepped inside. They weren't loud men. They didn't need to be. They carried themselves with the quiet confidence of people who'd seen too much of the world to be easily shaken. Both were dressed simply, jeans, dark shirts, nothing flashy. But there was something about them, something steady, grounded. They found a corner table, ordered 2 beers, and said very little. To them, it was just another evening, a small pause in a life that had known storms. But peace is a fragile thing, and sometimes people mistake calm for weakness. They'd barely touched their drinks when a shadow fell over their table. "Hey, you two," a voice said, sharp, arrogant, dripping with unwarranted authority. Officer Brian Keller, off duty, whiskey glass in hand, trouble in his eyes. He stood there flanked by 2 other men, Mike Doyle and Travis Reed, both fellow officers, both just drunk enough to be dangerous. The trio looked like vultures, circling something they didn't understand. Brian smirked. "I think you'd better leave before things get complicated." Jordan didn't even look up. "Is there a problem, officer?" His voice was calm, measured, the kind of calm that irritates insecure men. Jason kept his eyes on his drink, but Brian took that calmness as defiance. "The problem," Brian said, leaning over the table, "is that this isn't exactly the kind of place for people like you." The words hung there, heavy and ugly, the kind of words that make the air turn sour. Jason lifted his eyes slowly. "People like us?" Brian shrugged. "You know what I mean." His friend snickered behind him. Travis, the drunkest of the 3, took a step closer. "We don't want trouble here. This bar's ours. Our turf." The room grew still. Even the music felt quieter. A few customers shifted in their seats. Some looked away. Others watched, curious, uncomfortable, unwilling to intervene. It was the same old story. Different night, same script. 3 off-duty cops, 3 loud egos, and 2 black men who just wanted to drink in peace. Jordan finally looked up. His eyes were steady, unreadable. He'd seen this before, not in a bar, but on streets, in checkpoints, in airports, in boardrooms. The look that said, "You don't belong." He met his brother's gaze. Just 1 second of eye contact, but it was enough. Twins who'd fought side by side didn't need words to speak. Brian saw silence. But what he didn't see was calculation. Jordan's eyes flicked across the room. The exits, the bar counter, the nearest camera. Jason noticed the same things. Their breathing stayed even, their hearts unshaken. 15 years in the service had trained them well. To read danger before it moved. To stay calm even when everything screamed chaos. Jordan said quietly, "We don't want trouble. We'll finish our drinks and leave." Brian smirked. "No, you'll leave now, and maybe thank me for being in a good mood." That smirk, that smug sense of power, stirred something deep in Jordan. Memories flashed. 15 years old. Stopped and searched for walking home with a backpack. The same tone, the same smirk, the same feeling of having to earn respect that should have been freely given. He had learned then to stay quiet. But he wasn't 15 anymore. Jason placed his beer down and spoke for the first time. "Maybe you should show us your IDs first, just to be sure you're really police officers." That was it. A spark in a room full of gas. Brian's face turned red. "You challenging me?" Mike shifted uncomfortably. "Brian, just let it go. They're not causing any—" "Shut up." Brian snapped. "You think you can walk in here and act all smart?" Travis laughed. "We run this place. We run this town. Jordan tilted his head slightly. The way you say that, you'd think the town belongs to you. That stung. Brian slammed his hand on the table. Hard. The bottles rattled. The sound cutting through the music. Get up, he barked. Jason's hand twitched, not toward violence, but restraint. A soldier's instinct to assess. Jordan exhaled, then rose slowly. Jason followed. Two calm men standing tall in a storm of noise. The room went silent. We're leaving, Jordan said evenly. But you'll regret how you handled this. Brian laughed mockingly. We'll see who regrets it when I search you outside. Jason looked him dead in the eye. You really have no idea who you're talking to, do you? Travis scoffed. Don't care if you're kings of Africa. You're nothing here. The twins didn't reply. They simply walked toward the door, shoulders squared, heads high, quiet dignity in motion. Their steps were measured, unhurried, controlled, military. The officers followed close behind, their boots heavy against the old wooden floor. Maria Lopez, the bartender, watched it all unfold. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached under the counter and grabbed her phone. She'd seen too much go wrong before, too many stories that never made it past the first punch. She started recording, just in case. The brothers stepped outside into the night. The neon sign flickered behind them, buzzing faintly. The street was almost empty, save for a few parked cars and the hum of distant traffic. The humid air pressed down on them as Brian's voice cut through the dark. You people think you can walk anywhere like you belong. Jason stopped mid-step, turned slowly and met his gaze. Careful, he said softly. Some words can't be taken back. But Brian didn't care. Power made him blind. Travis stumbled out behind him, still laughing. You got drugs? Bet you do. Brian shoved Jordan against the hood of a car, patting his pockets roughly. He pulled out Jordan's phone and wallet, tossing them to the ground. Nice phone for thief. Jordan straightened up slowly, his voice low but commanding. Pick it up. Brian sneered. Or what? And just like that, everything went still. It was a kind of silence that comes before a storm. Heavy, expectant, alive. The brothers didn't move. They didn't need to. Jordan's eyes were calm. Jason's jaw tightened. The night itself seemed to hold its breath. Behind the bar window, Maria kept filming, whispering to herself, Please don't let this end badly. The neon lights flickered again, a warning or maybe a sign. Because that night, something was about to shift, and the world was about to learn that sometimes the quietest people in the room are the ones you should never underestimate. The night air outside Mac's Roadhouse felt heavier than before, thick with heat tension and something that smelled like trouble. The streetlights flickered lazily, casting long, uneven shadows across the cracked pavement. Everything seemed slower, quieter, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Jordan and Jason stepped onto the street, side by side. Their movements were deliberate and measured, like two soldiers walking through a minefield, but one misstep could set off disaster. Behind them, the three officers followed, boots heavy, their drunken bravado still clinging to every step. Brian Keller, flushed with anger and power, led the charge, while Travis swayed unsteadily, muttering things that didn't make sense, and Mike Doyle seemed uneasy, the first to question the path he'd been pulled onto. Brian's hand shot out, shoving Jordan against the hood of a parked car. The sound echoed sharply in the quiet night. Jordan didn't flinch. His calm was unnerving, like a predator studying its prey, but aware the prey could fight back. And win. You people think you can walk anywhere like you belong, Brian growled. His words were heavy, full of entitlement, full of arrogance. Jason stepped forward, close enough to see Brian's twitching eye, the nervous flex of his hand. Careful, Jason said softly, the calm in his voice cutting through the aggression like a knife. Some words can't be taken back. Travis staggered, pointing at Jason. You got drugs? Bet you do. Brian started patting Jordan's pockets, tossing his wallet and phone onto the ground. Nice phone for a thief, he spat. Jordan crouched slightly to retrieve his items. His voice was calm, steady, but carried authority that made even Mike Doyle take a step back. Pick it up? Or what? Brian laughed. The question hung in humid air, more dangerous than any weapon. Jordan didn't answer. He didn't need to. His silence was a warning. His calm was the kind that comes from years of training. Jason moved almost imperceptibly, his eyes scanning, calculating. Military instinct. SEAL instinct. Years of being trained to move in chaos without panic. Brian sneered, sensing the silence as weakness. "You're threatening me?" "No," Jordan said, his voice low but firm. "I'm warning you." Mike Doyle's uneasy steps backward turned into a slight stumble. He wasn't drunk, but even he felt the weight of the calm that radiated from the twins. Something was different. Something was wrong for him. Jordan glanced at his watch, a military-grade timepiece. 1 minute. That was all he would give. 1 minute for these men to recognize that their arrogance had crossed the line. "You have 1 minute to apologize and leave," he said. Brian laughed. "Or what?" His voice tried to mask fear. He didn't know what he was facing. "Or you'll find out what happens when you cross high-ranking military officers," Jason said, his tone steady. His eyes never left Brian's. The air shifted. Even Travis stumbled. Even Brian's smug confidence faltered. "Military?" Brian scoffed. "You're lying." Jason tilted his head, sidestepping Travis's drunken lunge with effortless precision. Jordan raised his phone. "Unprovoked assault by an armed officer," he narrated calmly. His voice carried across the street like a ledger of accountability. Maria, the bartender, stepped out from the shadows with her phone, recording everything. Her hands were steady, though her heart raced. "I've called the sheriff," she said loudly, and the press. The officers froze. For the first time, the illusion of power cracked. Then came the calmest, most commanding voice in the night. "It won't be." From a sleek black sedan, Assistant District Attorney Nia Reynolds stepped forward. Tall, poised, and unshakable in her suit. Her badge gleamed under the flickering streetlights. She surveyed the scene with a practiced eye. "Because I just witnessed 3 off-duty officers commit multiple crimes," she said. Her voice didn't quiver. "Harassment, assault, abuse of authority." Brian stammered, lost in disbelief. "They provoked us." "Really?" Nia's voice was sharp now. "Because the videos I've received show the opposite." Jason nodded respectfully. "ADA Reynolds, good to see you again." Her brows lifted in recognition. "Commander Carter?" "Captain Jordan Carter, ma'am," Jordan replied. The silence was deafening. Mike Doyle's knees went weak. Travis's confidence melted into panic. Brian blinked, suddenly seeing the twins in a way he hadn't before. "You're—" Brian began, stammering for words. "Captain Jordan Carter." Jordan cut in, crisp and authoritative. U.S. Army, 3rd Ranger Battalion. Currently stationed at Fort Bragg. Commander Jason Carter. Jason added U.S. Navy SEAL Team 6. On leave. The revelation hit Brian like a hammer. In a single instant, the night's power dynamic flipped completely. They had harassed 2 of the most highly trained soldiers in the country, and it had all been caught on camera. "You still," Brian tried to speak. "You're not our commanding officer," Jordan said. "And definitely not sober." The sheriff's patrol cars arrived shortly after, red and blue lights reflecting off the asphalt, painting the tense scene in chaos and authority. "These 3?" the deputy asked Nia. She nodded. "Charge them with harassment, assault, misconduct, and get internal affairs on standby." Brian's face turned pale. "You don't understand. We didn't know they were." Jason's eyes darkened, voice steady but icy. "So it's fine when it's civilians?" Nia smirked. "We have footage from 5 angles, gentlemen." Maria raised her phone slightly. "Make that 6. Mike Doyle collapsed on the curb. He realized too late that he had followed the wrong leader, that he had been complicit. Travis and Brian scrambled, trying to salvage something, anything, from the chaos they created. "What do you want? Money?" Brian asked weakly. "Justice," Jordan said. "Simple, firm, unwavering. For everyone you've done this to." The officers were handcuffed, their night of arrogance and bullying ending in quiet humiliation. The video of the incident had already gone viral. Hashtag Justice at Max was trending within hours. From that moment, nothing would be the same. The twins had walked into a bar for a quiet drink, but they had walked out holding the night's truth, that arrogance, entitlement, and prejudice always collapse before discipline, character, and courage. And in the quiet of the night, under flickering streetlights, a lesson was learned. Some confrontations are about more than pride or power. They're about justice. And justice sometimes comes with cameras, witnesses, and the calm of two men who never forget who they are. Morning in Austin arrived quietly, almost reluctantly, as if the city itself were still processing the chaos of the night before. The sun rose over empty streets, casting long shadows over the sidewalks where late-night wanderers had once walked. But the news had already traveled faster than the light. At Max Roadhouse, now buzzing with cameras, curious onlookers, and reporters, the atmosphere had changed. What was once just a bar had become a stage, a witness to a story the city couldn't ignore. Maria Lopez, the bartender who had quietly filmed the unfolding events, stood at the entrance. Her hands rested on the counter, her eyes scanning the crowd. People were coming in waves, some to sip coffee, some to watch, all drawn by the story that had gone viral overnight. The hashtag Justice at Max trended nationwide. Screens in cafes, offices, and homes replayed the footage. 3 off-duty officers abusing their power. 2 black men standing calm, unwavering and dignified. And one decisive moment when authority met competence and arrogance crumbled. Jordan and Jason didn't rush to join the spectacle. Wait, before I continue, if you're feeling this story already, do me a quick favor. Like this video, drop a comment, and subscribe. That's how you help me keep bringing real, soul-stirring stories like this your way. They watched quietly from a corner table, their drinks long forgotten. They weren't celebrating. They were processing. Years of training, discipline, and life experience had prepared them for crises in combat zones, in hostage situations, in military operations. But nothing could prepare someone for quiet, unrelenting judgment of the public. And yet, the principle was the same. Control, patience, strategy. Looks like they finally learned, Jason murmured, his voice low, almost reflective. He traced the rim of his coffee cup, thinking about how quickly power can shift. Jordan nodded. But this is just the beginning. People see the moment, but we need real change, not just viral outrage. By mid-morning, the consequences began to unfold. Brian Keller, Travis Reed, and Mike Doyle had become the subjects of immediate investigation. The Internal Affairs Division moved swiftly, backed by video evidence from multiple angles, witness statements, and Maria's brave documentation. By noon, the department had placed all 3 officers on administrative leave pending a full review. Reports flooded in. Victims of harassment, intimidation, and misconduct, some long afraid to speak out, found courage in the public scrutiny. Within hours, 14 more victims came forward, sharing stories that mirrored a night at Max Roadhouse. Each story was a puzzle piece, revealing a pattern of abuse and entitlement that could no longer be hidden. The media followed relentlessly. The footage of Jordan and Jason, calm yet commanding, replayed endlessly. Commentators analyzed every moment, their posture, their tone, their patience. Viewers marveled not at violence, but at control, strategy, and dignity. Maria watched the cameras, her heart swelling with quiet pride. Silent witnesses are accomplices, her mind whispered, recalling the sign she had decided to hang above her reopened bar. She had renamed it Freedom's Taproom, a place that would serve more than drinks. It would serve as a reminder. Courage matters, even in small acts. As the day progressed, city officials acted. The mayor ordered an immediate review of departmental procedures, pledging reform and transparency. Ethics and harassment protocols were rewritten. Officers who had once turned blind eyes found themselves answering questions. Justice was moving, deliberate and inevitable. Jordan received a call from Fort Bragg. His promotion to major had been approved, and he was tasked with leading police ethics training nationwide. His voice carried calm authority during the call, but inside, he reflected on the irony. The very lessons he would teach others had been reinforced not in a military operation, but in a bar on a humid Austin night. Jason's trajectory shifted. 2. The Pentagon requested his expertise in military-civilian relations, seeking guidance on how to prevent incidents of abuse and entitlement in local enforcement. He accepted, knowing that influence could be more powerful when used to guide systemic change rather than simply win individual confrontations. Meanwhile, the fallen officers scrambled. Brian, once brimming with confidence and power, found himself pouring coffee at a roadside diner. Travis, the loud, drunken enforcer, was reduced to selling car insurance over phone. Mike patrolled supermarket doors at night, weighed down by regret and the realization that his career, like his sense of self, had been built on obedience to the wrong cause. Even the community responded. Citizens rallied at Freedom's taproom, sharing stories of everyday injustices and celebrating those who acted with courage. What had started as an isolated incident had sparked a movement, an unspoken understanding that accountability could no longer be optional. Jordan and Jason watched it all unfold, quietly reflective. They didn't boast, and they didn't need to. Their victory was in restraint, in courage under pressure, and in the demonstration that true authority doesn't demand fear, it earns respect. A local news anchor summarized the story succinctly. Two civilians recorded what could have been a simple act of harassment, stood their ground, and revealed a system of misconduct. Their bravery has set off a chain reaction, departmental reforms, widespread accountability, and a nationwide conversation about power, respect, and responsibility. Even months later, the story continued to ripple outward. Nia Reynolds, the ADA who had appeared on the scene that night, was elected district attorney with 72% of the vote, the first black woman to hold that position in the county's history. She credited the twins' courage and Maria's documentation as pivotal in her campaign, showing that a single night of integrity could echo far beyond the immediate moment. The twins themselves returned to their quiet lives, though quiet no longer meant unnoticed. Jordan's training program shaped a new generation of police officers who understood that authority without accountability is dangerous. Jason's Pentagon role influence policy, helping bridge the gap between military discipline and civilian oversight. Back at Freedom's taproom, Maria's new sign hung proudly. Silent witnesses are accomplices. Patrons read it, paused, and reflected. Some smiled, some nodded, some whispered thanks. The bar had become a symbol, a lesson, a memorial to that night, when courage met injustice, and dignity refused to yield. By the time the night returned, quiet once again, Brian Keller sat alone in a roadside diner, the irony settling in around him. He had once held power, a badge, a gun, and a sense of invincibility. But in that bar, under the watchful eyes of two men who had seen death and chaos in combat zones, he had lost all of it. The twins had only their dignity, and that had been enough. And the lesson was clear. Arrogance always loses to competence. Prejudice always collapses before character. And those who judge by appearances always learn too late that they've picked the wrong people. Jordan and Jason didn't need to speak. They had acted, they had stood, and in doing so, they had reminded the world that justice isn't just a word written on paper. It's a choice, a courage, and sometimes a single moment where right meets wrong under the hum of streetlights. The city had calmed. Streets once heavy with tension now carried a quiet hum of everyday life. But something had changed in the air. Austin, and perhaps even the world, had witnessed a story that refused to fade. A story about courage, integrity, and the quiet power of doing what's right. Jordan and Jason Carter returned to their routines, but they were no longer just men passing through life unnoticed. They had become symbols, not by choice, but by the force of circumstance and the strength of their character. At Freedom's taproom, Maria Lopez stood behind the counter, now polished and gleaming with renewed purpose. Crowds still came nightly, not just for drinks, but to witness a story etched into the bar's very walls. The sign she hung after the incident, "Silent witnesses are accomplices," had become more than a motto. It was a mantra for the city, a call to courage in quiet places. The twins rarely spoke publicly about that night, yet their presence resonated everywhere. Jordan's police ethics training programs were now mandatory in departments nationwide. Officers learned firsthand the lesson he had demonstrated. Respect is not demanded by authority. It is earned by character. Jason, in his Pentagon role, worked tirelessly to reshape policies around military-civilian interactions, ensuring that those entrusted with power would exercise it responsibly. His face graced Time magazine, the cover story reading, "The commander who changed the conversation." He hadn't sought recognition, yet the world had taken notice, compelled by the quiet strength of action over words. Back in Austin, the three disgraced officers had become cautionary tales. Brian Keller poured coffee at a roadside diner, a shadow of his former self. Travis Reed sold car insurance over the phone, his arrogance diminished to a monotone sales pitch. Mike Doyle patrolled supermarket doors at night, haunted by the realization that his choices had destroyed a career built on a false sense of authority. But the true legacy wasn't punishment. It was the lives that changed because of that night. The 14 victims who came forward, the countless others inspired to speak up, and the communities that demanded better from those in power. Nia Reynolds, the assistant district attorney who had intervened so decisively, became district attorney, making history as the first black woman in the county to hold the office. She often reflected on that night, realizing how a single act of courage, two men standing firm against injustice, could ripple through institutions and hearts alike. Jordan and Jason met quietly one evening on a rooftop, overlooking the city that had once threatened to crush them. The wind carried a hint of humidity from that fateful night, and the neon signs below flickered softly, shadows dancing on the pavement. "People forget so easily," Jason said, his voice contemplative. "They'll see the headlines, maybe even remember the viral videos, but they won't remember the quiet moments." Jordan nodded. True victory isn't the viral story. It's the ripple it causes. The people who now stand taller because they saw courage, because they saw dignity, because they saw that justice isn't just words on paper. They remembered every detail that night. The oppressive tension in the bar, the arrogance in Brian's eyes, the smell of alcohol and cigarettes, the hum of country music that masked the danger lurking inches away. But they also remembered control, strategy, and the quiet, unwavering power of preparation. It wasn't just about winning a confrontation. It was about proving something far bigger, that justice is no color, and character transcends appearances. It was about showing the world, one choice, one act, one refusal to bow to intimidation at a time, that courage could ripple outward, reshaping lives and institutions. Months turned into years. Freedom's Taproom became a hub for community discussions, workshops on civic engagement, and storytelling nights where ordinary people share extraordinary acts of bravery. Jordan's ethics seminars influenced policies nationwide. Jason's Pentagon work helped establish protocols that ensured civilians and military personnel alike were treated with fairness and respect. Even the smallest acts became part of the legacy. A young black officer, inspired by Jordan, refused to let fear dictate his actions in a tense situation. A community organizer, watching the viral footage, rallied citizens to demand accountability from local leadership. A bar patron, previously silent, found the courage to report harassment that might have otherwise been ignored. Jordan and Jason didn't need accolades. Their satisfaction came from seeing systems shift, lives change, and courage multiply. They had stood in a bar that night with nothing but their dignity. And in doing so, they had ignited a movement that no badge, no gun, no power could suppress. One evening, watching the sunset from their shared porch, Jordan turned to Jason. "You know," he said, a soft smile tugging at his lips, "sometimes I think the world underestimates what quiet strength can do." Jason chuckled. They'll never forget it again. Because the story had traveled far beyond Austin. It had become a lesson in classrooms, a cautionary tale in police departments, a beacon for those who felt powerless. It had reminded the world that integrity is unshakable, that courage is contagious, and that those who stand for justice, even quietly, even alone, leave an indelible mark. And in the end, the twins' victory was not in viral fame, promotions, or recognition. It was in the unbroken dignity they carried home that night, the ripple of justice that spread far beyond Mac's Roadhouse, and a reminder that the right choice, made at the right time, can change everything. Brian, Travis, and Mike had lost their power, their badges, and their sense of control. But Jordan and Jason had gained something far greater. The enduring truth that integrity, courage, and character always outlast arrogance, prejudice, and fear. As the night fell over Austin, the neon lights glimmered over Freedom's taproom. Inside, Maria poured drinks for patrons who whispered about that night. And outside, Jordan and Jason walked quietly toward their car, their silhouettes strong against the glowing city. Justice had been served. But more than that, it had been remembered, and it would never be forgotten. Because in the end, true strength is quiet. Dignity is unshakable, and the consequences of arrogance are inevitable. And sometimes, all it takes is two men standing their ground to remind the world of that truth. If this story hit different, don't just watch, kindly react. Like it, share it, drop a comment, and smash that subscribe button. More stories that move you are loading. You need to subscribe so you don't miss it. See you soon.